Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Second Chance Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chance Tyson. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you guys enjoyed the intro. I know it wasn't anything much, but it's a work in progress, and I'm really hoping you guys enjoyed the content I'm about to bring to you. So let's get right into it. Today's episode is going to be about the NFL schedule release. And as of Thursday night at around about 8 o'clock, the NFL on ESPN released all of the schedules for the 2020 season. And while there were a lot of predictions for what the first games were going to be, along with great interviews from coaches and what team schedule toughnesses were going to be, it was just an all-around great night for people who are fans of the NFL. And so with that being said, the first thing I want to talk to you guys about right now is schedule toughness around the league. The NFL and CBS put out a 32-team ranking of the toughest schedules, and I'm going to give you guys the top 5. And either why I disagree with them. Well, there's a couple of things I want to touch on about this. Something that stuck out to me, as well as a couple of the things I disagree with. So we're going to go number 1, the New England Patriots. Number 2, the New York Jets. Number 3, the Miami Dolphins. Number 4, the San Francisco 49ers. And all tied for 5th, we've got the Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions, and Atlanta Falcons. So I'm going to give you guys the first thing I disagree with. And that's the New England Patriots being at number 1. The only reason it seems like to me that they are being put at number 1 in the toughness schedule is because of the departure of Tom Brady. They only play 4 difficult teams in their schedule, or quote-unquote, that I would consider difficult outside of their own division, playing the Bills. And that's the 49ers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Rams, and the Seahawks. So they play 5 different teams, excuse me. So 5 different teams, only 2 of them are away. And I heard somebody say on, it was either Fox Sports or ESPN the other day, that they were, quote-unquote, going to have jet lag, and that was going to affect them, and that was why the schedule was tough. I'll be honest with you, jet lag is not an excuse in the NFL, and it shouldn't be if it is. Because if you're an experienced player, you already have trainers that are fully preparing you to experience jet lag and getting the proper sleep that you need to ensure you are 100% on the field. That shouldn't be an excuse at all. And so that's my disagreement with the number 1 position. But the other thing that stuck out to me is in the top 5 is the entire AFC East. Did anyone notice that? I mean, or is that just me? Because let's think here. The Jets, the Dolphins, the Bills, and the Patriots. They left 1 space between them and the 49ers. So the Bills, the Dolphins, and the Jets, one of their difficult opponents, quote unquote, is obviously the Patriots. But if you're going to put New England at number 1, having the most difficult schedule because of 5 difficult opponents and the departure of Tom Brady, how do we not have a 4-way tie for first? And here's the trend I'm looking at. The entire AFC East plays the San Francisco 49ers, the Kansas City Chiefs, the New England Patriots, outside of the Patriots themselves, they obviously can't play themselves, the Los Angeles Rams, and the Seattle Seahawks. They have 5 difficult opponents. And if you count out the Patriots, technically the Jets, Dolphins, and Bills have 6. So how do we not have a 4-way tie for first is my question. Because if the Patriots' schedule is so difficult but is somehow matching the rest of the AFC East, and they are the quote-unquote supreme leader of the AFC East with the Bills poised to take over, hopefully, how do you not have a complete 4 or 5-way tie? And so that was my difficulty understanding the schedule toughness there, because it seems off to me. Something isn't right about that. Hopefully we'll get an updated one. We'll see what happens in the future. And now I want to switch gears, and I want to talk to you guys about something that I spoke to on my buddy Max Van Auken's podcast a couple weeks ago. And if you know me personally, I've been talking about this for months now. The Indianapolis Colts being the most slept-on team going into the 2020 NFL season. And that may sound crazy to you guys, but let me explain. Let me explain a little bit, all right? So, over the offseason, acquired Phillip Rivers, right? Your first thought is, okay, it's Phillip Rivers. He didn't do much having Keenan Allen and Melvin Gordon in San Diego, but what good does that do for the Colts? Well, let me explain something to you guys. Chargers didn't have a good offensive line. But Phillip Rivers is still a very sound quarterback, even though he's on the downslope of his career. He's going in and taking over the number 1 offensive line in the league. He's going to run that team. He has a healthy T.Y. Hilton, hopefully. And they have one of the best young defenses in the league. And not only that, they drafted incredible. right? So listen to the Colts draft picks here, and you guys tell me if I'm crazy. The second round, they drafted Phillip Rivers, another weapon, Michael Pittman Jr. Great pick, absolute steal, one of the best receivers in the draft, hands down. Second round, ninth pick, they took Jonathan Taylor, the piece that they needed to complete their offense, a sound running back. Then they took Julian Blackmon, a safety from Utah, and then they drafted him a backup quarterback who's also very sound, Jacob Eason. After that, they took an offensive lineman, Danny Piner, defensive tackle Rob Windsor, which is, again, an absolute steal. He's an animal. Isaiah Rodgers, cornerback out of University of Massachusetts. They took him another weapon who I haven't heard of much. I'm going to do some research on him. Desmond Patman. I haven't heard of him. He's a player for Washington State. Apparently, I was looking up some of his stats. Very solid receiver. Didn't stick out to a lot of people, but still, for a 6th-round pick, I mean, look at where Antonio Brown came from. This guy could pop and end up being one of the best receivers in the league. And then one of my favorite picks that they took, Jordan Glasgow, linebacker, Michigan. That in alone, by itself, that pick is a testimony to what the Colts are building right now. They dedicated 5 picks to offense, 4 picks to defense. And so that's just what sticks out to me for the Colts and why I personally think they're going to take over and they're going to win the AFC South. Because the Titans, while they have a stellar offense, their defense couldn't convert when it came down to crunch time against Kansas City. The Colts have built their defense so that when it comes down to crunch time, they're going to convert and they won't lose that playoff game to Kansas City. And so that's why I think the Colts are the most slept-on team going into 2020. Drop a comment below. Let me know who you guys think is the most slept-on team going into 2020. And tell me if you agree with me, disagree with me, what you see is wrong with my opinion. I love to hear all feedback. I will talk to you guys about football all day long. And so I want to get into my 2 early week 1 predictions for you guys, but I want to touch on one topic first, and that is Tampa Bay. Yes, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Here's why I think they're overrated. Clearly having one of the best offenses in the league right now, a solid O-line, a somewhat decent running back, and a receiving core with Rob Gronkowski himself. But here's what everyone's forgetting about Rob Gronkowski. He retired and went to the WWE. Dropped 45 pounds of muscle. 45 pounds, right? You can't just gain that back. That's not something you just pick up and put it back on you, right? The other thing, too, is about them, their defense. They have not dedicated enough time to defense, right? They made a few acquisitions in the draft that I liked, and I think that were a good stepping stone to start building their defense. But just like the Packers, the Bucs are trying to win now, and unfortunately, they don't have the defensive pieces to do it. I spoke about it earlier whenever I was talking about the Colts playing the Chiefs and like the Titans not being able to convert on defense. They don't have enough on defense in order to convert in big games. So when you play a team like the Saints in week 1, I think that the Saints are going to walk all over you because you may have the best offense in the league, but you don't have the best defense in the league. And that is hands down my opinion on Tampa Bay. And I think that I see them having a decent season, but I don't see them going to the Super Bowl they might be a wild card team with this new 7th seed in play, but I don't see them doing very well. And so moving on, my 2 early week 1 predictions. Here we go. All right. Week 1, we've got the Bills versus the Jets on the opener, right? Taking the Bills all day long, 100%. Here's why. Stephon Diggs comes out with a newfound confidence, a new quarterback, and plays a stellar game, leads the Bills to a W, right? Simple as that. Next, we've got the Dolphins and Patriots. I think even with the Dolphins acquiring a few offensive linemen and Tua Tagovailoa in the draft, I think that the Patriots come out here still having one of the best offensive lines in the league, one of the best defenses for sure, and take the W. Patriots win that, 100%. Then, Saints versus Buccaneers. I obviously take the Saints. I just explained to you guys. The Buccaneers don't have stellar enough of a defense to handle Kamara, Thomas, Breeze, and it's not something they can handle. So, Saints all the way, 100%. Next, we got the Ravens versus the Browns. I don't think I have to explain here. Lamar Jackson, all of the defensive pieces they acquired in the draft. The Ravens, 100%. Moving on. Redskins, Eagles. This one was difficult for me. I think Chase Young is going to make a big impact on that team. He's going to come in and be a huge leader, right? But Dwayne Haskins, as mentioned by Urban Meyer earlier this week, he said Haskins is an elite quarterback who needs to be brought around elite culture. And Washington is not the place for elite culture, even though they're trying to build it. I give Washington all the respect in the world, but they aren't an elite team yet, even acquiring Chase Young. So I think that there's a lot of work to do in Washington, but I see Philly coming in and taking the W on this one. Carson Wentz is going to come back, obviously, off of his injury and have a stellar season and play great in the first game. Next, we've got what I like to call a Thanksgiving game. We've got the Lions versus the Bears. I'm taking the Lions on this one. Even with the Bears acquiring Nick Foles, who knows who's going to start at that point. Obviously, again, too early predictions. We don't know if Foles or Trubisky is going to start. So I'm going to take the Lions. I think that they've got it in the bag. I think Matt Stafford, again, a veteran quarterback, going to come out, have a great game, and defeat the Bears. And then we have the Jaguars versus the Colts. Now, not to shortstop the Jaguars. I think what they've done in the draft is great. Acquiring a cornerback from Florida, replacing the hole that Jalen Ramsey left. And I think that Gardner Minshew is one of the up-and-coming quarterbacks in the league. I know he seems a little goofy, Minshew mania, all of that noise. But if you put aside all of the BS and you look at his skill in a nutshell, he can be developed properly and take the Jaguars to the playoffs. But, there's a lot of buts in this because they're facing the Colts. My most slept on team going into 2020. Colts are going to demolish the Jaguars. 100%. I think the Jaguars come out and put up a fight, but the Colts are going to be too much for them to handle because the Colts can stand toe-to-toe with any team in the league, I feel like, personally. So then moving on, we got the Vikings and the Packers. This one's difficult, but what I like about this matchup is the Packers, there's a little bit of drama there. So I think Aaron Rodgers is going to come out and put up stellar numbers and prove to the Packers that they should not be trying to build around a new quarterback. Packers in that game, 100%. The Bengals versus the Chargers. Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert, two of the best quarterbacks coming out of the draft this year. I think Burrow takes the W. I think if he gets a healthy A.J. Green and John Ross, I think that he comes out and demolishes the Chargers because, again, another team, just like the Bucs, who didn't dedicate enough of their time to defense. Much as I like the Chargers, I like Keenan Allen, I like Austin Eckler. If you don't build enough defense and you've got weapons against you like John Ross and A.J. Green, I mean, even with Derwin James, it's too much. The Bengals are too much to handle. So I'm taking the Bengals in that matchup. So then we've got the Battle of the Dirty Birds, the Falcons versus the Seahawks. I think the Falcons are going to come out and win that game. I think with the new acquiring Todd Gurley in the offseason is setting Atlanta up to win now. And they are going to be one of the better teams coming out of the NFC this year. And I think if they can prove early that they can defeat the Seahawks, I think that they'll be one of those 7th seed teams coming into the playoffs and surprising everyone. All right, moving on. So we've got the 49ers versus the Cardinals. I think that the 49ers take this game as much as I like Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. I think the 49ers take this game only because you may look at it and say, oh, they lost Marquise Goodwin. They lost Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. But don't look past them. They still have Travis Benjamin, Dante Pettis, Deebo Samuels, and now Brandon Ayuk. I think the 49ers take that game, and I think D-Hop will put on a show as usual, but I think the 49ers take it. Next, we've got the Panthers versus the Raiders. I really like Teddy Bridgewater. Here's my thing about Teddy Bridgewater. I really like him, but I don't think he is prepared again for the starting quarterback role. I like what Matt Rule is doing, and I think that he is a great coach for Teddy to become a starter again, but they only have Christian McCaffrey. They don't have many wide receivers. They don't have weapons for him to throw to like he did in New Orleans, where he prospered as a backup. So I think the Raiders take that game only because Derek Carr is going to come out and throw all over the Panthers defense because, again, another team who didn't dedicate enough time to defense. The Panthers have nobody in their secondary. Obviously losing Luke Kuechly too. They lost him. So we're going to move on from that one. Now we've got a playoff rematch. Here we go. Chiefs-Texans. Chiefs. Much as I hate to say it. I would have loved to have seen another playoff matchup against having those two teams in it, because that game as a whole last season was incredible. DeAndre Hopkins put on a show. Patrick Mahomes put on a show. Deshaun Watson put on a show. I mean, it was just a great game to watch. And I think with the Texans losing all of the pieces they've lost to their offense, I mean, David Johnson is, I guess, a good addition because they needed a running back. But now they have Will Fuller. That's it. So I take the Chiefs in that game. I think they probably won't walk all over them, but I think it's going to be an easy one for Pat Mahomes to come in and win off of the Super Bowl hype that they're still on. And then we got the Rams versus the Cowboys. I think the Rams got it. I think Jared Goff will come in, him and Brandon Cooks, still have one of the number one defenses in the league with Aaron Donald. And I think they come in and win that game. I think it's going to be difficult for them to keep an eye on Amari Cooper because it seems like Jalen Ramsey has been on a downfall of being an elite cornerback. And so I think it's going to be a little difficult for them to handle. But I see the Rams taking that one. Now moving on, we've got kind of a weird matchup. The Steelers versus the Giants. And now for all of the people who probably are going to listen to this and know me, know I am a diehard Steelers fan through and through. But I'm going to put my preferences aside here and say that Saquon Barkley is hard to handle. Yes, Pittsburgh may have one of the best defensive lines in the league and one of the best secondaries too. But Saquon Barkley is huge and is a lot to handle. And the Giants have a few weapons in Sterling Shepard and a halfway decent quarterback in Daniel Jones. And I think that the Steelers will take the win on this one, but it's not going to come easy. As much as I want to say that the Steelers come out and walk all over them, which will probably be what I'm screaming for while I'm watching it on my TV, I think the Giants put up a fight, but the Steelers still get the W. And then my 16th and final matchup, the Broncos versus the Titans. Drew Lock has taken that team to different standards. I think Elway drafted an absolute solid replacement for Joe Flacco. And I don't even think Joe Flacco was Peyton Manning's replacement, to be honest with you. I think that Drew Lock is the replacement, the third and final replacement going into the season. He is a great quarterback to build around. Probably one of the best Missouri quarterbacks in a while. And so I think that acquiring the wide receivers they did in the draft, they come out and they put up a fight against the Titans and they take the W. That's going to be one of my more controversial ones because as much as I think the Titans will come out and stomp the Broncos defense, I think that the Broncos come out with too much offense and it totally manhandle the Titans defense. And so with that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Second Chance Sports Podcast. That is my NFL schedule release edition. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm trying my best to bring content that you guys will enjoy. And please go like, rate, subscribe on all streaming platforms. Check out my social media. Second Chance Pod is the handle. Like I said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I will have a new episode coming for you guys sometime soon. More than likely it's going to be on the NBA draft. No promises, though, because there's a lot of football to cover coming up. So I will see you guys next time. And, hey, one more thing. I want to shout out my buddy Max Van Auken. He was a huge help in this process. I was talking about being on his podcast earlier. And I want you guys to go give him the same thing you would give me. Like, rate, subscribe, follow him on social media. It's going to be the MVP Podcast, the Max Van Auken Podcast. Go give him a shout. Follow his stuff. He interviews so many great players, great fighters. He's a huge UFC guy, huge into basketball, and he has a great podcast, and he is definitely one you guys should go check out. So check him out, like, rate, subscribe. He's got some big stuff coming up, so stay tuned for him. And you guys have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.